This happened just a few weeks ago. I had just started volunteering at a small church. I thought it would be a good way to meet people and escape my lonely routine. The church was old and worn, with creaky floorboards and an air of history that fascinated me. I didn't know much about churches, but I felt drawn to the community and their warmth. Maybe I was hoping for something meaningful, maybe even a friend or two. On my second day, I overheard the pastor talking. An exorcism was planned for the weekend. An elderly woman, Mrs. Thompson, was rumored to be tormented by something unsettling. I felt a mix of curiosity and fear. The thought of witnessing an exorcism excited and terrified me. I wasn't sure what to expect. The days leading up to the event were strange. The lights in the church flickered at odd times. I heard noises that sent chills down my spine. It was as if the very walls were whispering. I wasn't sure if I was imagining things or if something was really happening. The congregation grew more anxious. Their faces were pale and tight. I could see the changes in Mrs. Thompson too. One moment she'd be frightened, and the next she would wear a calm expression that felt wrong. Saturday arrived. The air felt heavy. The church was packed. I watched as the pastor and the congregation gathered around Mrs. Thompson. I was nervous, gripping my camera like it was a lifeline. I wanted to document this moment, but part of me didn't want to be there at all. The atmosphere thickened, like a storm was brewing. My heart was racing. The pastor began chanting. Mrs. Thompson's expression shifted again. I thought I saw something flash in her eyes. The flickering lights grew chaotic. A cold draft whipped through the room. My skin crawled. I felt paralyzed, unable to look away. A scream echoed through the church. It wasn't clear where it came from. Everyone looked around, wide-eyed and confused. When the exorcism was over, relief washed over me. But a lingering dread settled in. I took a deep breath and left, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling. The moment I returned home, I felt something was off. My things were out of place, but I couldn't remember moving them. Whispers echoed in my ears, soft and unintelligible. I thought I was just tired, but it wouldn't fade. Even now, I can't shake the thought of what I brought back with me. Maybe it was just my imagination. I think about it every day. Sometimes, late at night, I could swear I feel a presence in the corners of my room. Then, one night, I heard a voice that seemed to come from nowhere. "Jamie?" It whispered. I looked around, but nobody was there. My heart raced. I tried to laugh it off, but I couldn't. I've never been so scared in my life. I want to forget, but part of me knows I will never be able to escape what happened. The following day dragged on. I kept replaying the exorcism in my mind, each moment lingering like an unwelcome shadow. I felt on edge. Something in the air didn't feel right, and it was more than just my nerves. I decided to go back to the church, hoping to talk to someone about what happened. When I arrived, the atmosphere was different. The usually welcoming faces of the congregation were replaced by worried expressions. They darted around, whispering in hushed tones. I approached a woman I recognized from the service, Clara. She was usually upbeat, but her eyes were wide with fear. "Is everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Clara shook her head. "It's Mrs. Thompson. She's worse. She's not the same since the exorcism." "What do you mean?" I felt a knot form in my stomach. "She's been talking to people who aren't here. And she keeps screaming about shadows. They're following her." Clara took a shaky breath. "Some say it's not over." I felt cold. The thought of shadows made my skin prickle. "Can I see her?" Clara hesitated, but eventually nodded. "Just be careful. You might not like what you find." We walked to Mrs. Thompson's house, the road feeling longer than usual. Clara led me inside. The room was dark, curtains drawn tight. I expected to find a frail old woman in bed, maybe covered in blankets. Instead, I saw her sitting in a corner, her back to us. "Mrs. Thompson?" I called gently, though my voice quivered. She turned slowly, and my breath caught. Her eyes were sunken and unfocused, and her mouth curled into a smile that looked wrong. "I've been waiting," she said, her voice oddly cheerful. "For what?" I managed to ask, trying to ignore the feeling of dread creeping up my spine. "To share," she replied, her tone chilling. "They want to play with you too." Before I could react, Clara gasped. I turned to her, but she looked transfixed, as though she were listening to something only she could hear. I felt a wave of panic. "Clara! Let us go!" But then I heard it too, a low murmur, rising from the shadows in the corners of the room. I looked back at Mrs. Thompson, and for a split second, I thought I saw the flicker of something dark behind her, twisting in the dim light. Suddenly, she lunged forward, and I stumbled back. "You can't run from them. They're already here." Her voice rose, almost as if she were chanting, and the room seemed to pulse around us. I bolted out of the house, heart racing, but as I reached the threshold, a deafening crash echoed behind me, causing the walls to shudder. The air felt thick, and the whispers intensified, wrapping around me like a cold blanket. I ran as fast as I could to my car, slamming the door shut. But what I felt next was worse, the sensation of being watched, of something lingering just beyond my view. I glanced in the rearview mirror and froze. That's when I saw it. A dark figure standing by the side of the road, watching. It vanished the moment I blinked, leaving only an unsettling emptiness. I drove home, but I knew I couldn't escape. The whispers followed me, growing louder. Whatever came back with me from the church wasn't done. I could feel its presence, lurking just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. That night, sleep eluded me. Every creak of the house sent me into a panic, and the darkness felt heavy. I wrapped myself in a blanket, trying to drown out the whispers still echoing in my mind. I considered calling Clara, but I didn't want to drag her back into this nightmare. Finally, I forced myself to look through my notes on the exorcism, hoping for some clarity. I shoved the old pages aside and pulled out my phone. I needed to know more about Mrs. Thompson, the history of the church, anything that could explain what was happening. After some time scrolling, I stumbled upon a forum dedicated to supernatural events. A post caught my eye, discussing strange occurrences at local churches that had performed exorcisms. I read through several comments, each one more chilling than the last. People claimed lasting attachments from spirits, horrors that followed them home. Their experiences mirrored my own. My heart sank. I wasn't alone in this. Just then, there was a soft knock at my window. I jumped and spun around, my heart racing. It was only the wind rattling the branches outside. I chuckled nervously, my mind was playing tricks. Yet, the feeling of being watched persisted. Then I heard it again, the whispers, now clearly audible. I stood up, listening intently. They seemed to be coming from the hallway. My legs felt leaden as I walked toward the sound, cautious and slow. I felt like a moth drawn to a flame. I moved down the hallway, every step heavier than the last. The whispers changed, morphing into more distinct words, a chorus overlapping each other. I couldn't quite make out what they were saying, but it was clear they were calling for me. Suddenly, the lights flickered overhead. I froze. The house was old, but this felt different. There was a tension in the air, a shift that put my instincts on high alert. I hurried back to my room, heart pounding. That's when I realized my phone had gone silent. No more notifications, no lights, nothing. I grabbed it off the table and saw that the battery was dead, despite it having been fully charged. Panic surged within me. What if the whispers weren't just in my head? What if they were connected to whatever was haunting me? I turned to leave my room when I noticed the curtains fluttering. I knew I had closed them. I crossed the room and pulled them tight, but as I did, I caught a glimpse of something in the darkness of the yard, something standing where the shadows were deepest. It was the same dark figure from earlier. Before I could register my fear, it moved closer, gliding toward the house. There was something familiar about it, something that sent chills down my spine. I felt its presence growing in intensity, pressing against the walls of my mind. Then everything went dark. The power cut out, plunging the house into silence. The whispers halted. I stood frozen in place, heart racing. I had to get out. I stumbled toward the door, only to find it wouldn't budge. I pulled with all my strength, panic rising higher. Was it locked? Had something been keeping me in? Then I heard a voice, soft but clear, breaking through the silence. You can't leave. My breath caught in my throat. I turned slowly, feeling dread wash over me. It was watching, waiting for its moment to reveal itself. I had to find a way out of this. I had to confront whatever was in my house. I felt a chill creep up my spine as the voice echoed in the darkness. You can't leave. It wrapped around me, tightening like a noose. I forced my feet to move, my instincts screamed at me to escape, but the oppressive air kept me rooted in place. Suddenly, a faint glow flickered from the hallway. I hesitated, caught between fear and curiosity. The whispers returned, louder this time. They mingled with a low hum, an unsettling lullaby. I took a step toward the light, praying it would lead me to safety. As I approached, the glow brightened. The air felt heavy with tension, like the moment before a storm. I peered around the corner and gasped. The walls seemed to pulsate with energy, shadows bending unnaturally. Then I saw it. A clear shape began to form, a figure draped in white, standing at the end of the hallway. It looked familiar but distorted, like I was seeing a broken reflection in a shattered mirror. I strained my eyes to make sense of it, but all I felt was dread. Why are you here? I called out, hoping for an answer. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it started to move, gliding closer, head tilted as if studying me. I felt something inside me recoil. It was as though its presence pierced through my very soul. Leave! I shouted, feeling brave for a second. But it didn't stop. The hallway felt suffocating, the walls closing in around me. The soft hum morphed into a chaotic jumble of voices, each one pushing against the others, overlapping into a cacophony that overwhelmed my mind. I turned to flee, but the hallway felt endless, twisting and turning. The air thickened, making it hard to breathe. It was like running through molasses. I could hear my heart thudding in my ears, every pulse screaming for me to escape. Just as I thought I'd be swallowed by the shadows, I glanced back to steal one last look at the figure. It was closer than I ever imagined. I could see its face clearly now. It wasn't just a random spirit, it looked just like Mrs. Thompson, the woman from the church. No, I whispered, horrified. This can't be happening. The realization hit me hard. Her face twisted, contorted into a smile that held no warmth. And then I remembered. The story Clara had told me about Mrs. Thompson's sorrow. How she never truly left the church even after her death. Had she been the one reaching out for help? Or was she the one keeping me captive, dragging me deeper into this nightmare? I shook my head, trying to think. I turned to rush back to my room, to find another way out. Panic surged through me, fueling my movements. But just as I reached the door, it slammed shut. I was trapped. Let me go! I screamed, fear spilling over. I pounded on the door, but it felt cold and unyielding. The whispers returned, growing louder until they drowned out my thoughts completely. Then, in the midst of the chaos, I heard a voice calling my name. It was clear and sharp, cutting through the noise. Was it Clara? Desperate, I pressed my ear against the door, trying to catch it again. Before I could decipher where it was coming from, the lights flicked back on. I turned to see the hallway behind me transform back into something normal. No shadows, no figures. Just my home, quiet and still, but the sense of dread lingered. I knew the danger wasn't gone. Something had shifted, and I could feel it watching me. Whatever had happened in that hallway, I had to confront it. I needed answers about Mrs. Thompson and what exactly I had brought home. As I took a deep breath and steadied myself, I heard the faintest whisper behind me, "We're not finished." I turned around, my heart in my throat, ready for whatever came next. I blinked, my breath hitching in my throat. The hallway felt like a blank canvas again, but my heartbeat clawed at my chest, reminding me that something had changed. I hurried away from the door, urgently scanning the living room. The familiar shadows of my home now felt strange, as though they were lurking, waiting for me to let my guard down. "Clara!" I shouted, hoping she would appear. She had to help me make sense of this madness. But the house remained silent. A wave of uncertainty washed over me. Was she safe? Had she felt any of this, I took a shaky step toward the front door, ready to run to her house. But then I froze. A cold draft swept through the room, causing the curtains to sway like ghostly fingers. I felt a chill crawl down my spine once more. I clenched my fists, anger flaring up. "Stop this!" I yelled into the empty space, daring whatever was there to show itself. The mocking whispers seemed to echo my words, swirling around the room. Just then, I noticed something on the floor. A thin piece of paper was barely visible under the edge of the old carpet. I knelt down to inspect it, pulling it out cautiously. It looked like a page torn from a book, covered in cramped, frantic handwriting. As I read the words, my fingers trembled. "She's still here. You've invited her in. Don't trust the light. You must leave before it's too late." My heart raced as I realized the weight of it. It talked about Mrs. Thompson, and how she wouldn't let anyone go once she had them. The chill inside me deepened. I didn't want to believe it. I had scoffed at Clara's stories of haunted churches and lost souls. But I felt the air shift again, the whispers now morphing into a low growl, an unsettling blend of anger and pain. A dark shadow darted across the wall, and I snapped my head in its direction, forcing my body to stay still. Through the haze, I could just make out the figure again, this time more defined, more threatening, as if it were feeding off my fear. It hovered just out of my reach, the distorted features of Mrs. Thompson's face twisted into an expression of rage. I stumbled back, the paper slipping from my grasp. "What do you want?" I shouted, the desperation creeping into my voice. In that heartbeat, the lights flickered violently before plunging me into darkness once more. I could feel the cold hands of panic seize my chest, followed by an overwhelming pressure on my mind. "Leave me alone!" I screamed, my voice cracking. Then, everything went silent. The whispers vanished. The cold retreated. I was left in a suffocating stillness, unsure if I had truly escaped or if it was merely a pause before the storm. But then I remembered the note. No light. I needed to leave, to find Clara. My instincts kicked in, and I dashed for the door again, flinging it open before doubt could catch up with me. As I broke into the night air, relief flooded through me. But just then, a familiar voice on the wind called my name. "Come back!" I hesitated, dread pooling in my stomach. I could feel something behind me, watching once more. Clara's voice blended with another something darker, something that had followed me home. I stood there, heart pounding in my ears, the night air turning thick and suffocating around me. Every instinct urged me to run. But the voice, soft and pleading, pulled at something deep inside me. "Clara?" I called, my own voice barely a whisper, lost in the shadows. The wind howled, and I took a hesitant step back toward the house. I needed to know if it was truly her. If she was here, that would mean I shook my head, unwilling to think of the darker implications. I took another shaky step, drawn by an invisible thread, then I heard it again. "Come back!" This time it was tinged with urgency, laced with dread. I looked back at the door, now a dark portal behind me. Every fiber of my being screamed to leave, but I still felt tethered to Clara. Suddenly, I caught a glimmer of movement from the corner of my eye. A shape lurked at the edge of the trees lining my yard. I squinted, my breath hitching again. It moved swiftly, gliding through the dark with a graceful menace I couldn't comprehend. Fear bolted through me. I turned on my heel and sprinted back down the path, my feet pounding against the ground. I needed to get away. I knew the way to Clara's house by heart, but every shadow felt alive, every rustle sent arrows of panic into my chest. As I burst through the front door of her house, I slammed it shut behind me, gasping for breath. The familiar scent of lavender filled the air, but it did little to quell the unease gnawing at me. "Clara!" I yelled again, my voice echoing through her empty home. "Where are you?" Silence answered me. I felt the walls close in, my thoughts racing. I needed to find her, she needed to know what happened. The note lingered in my mind, warning me to leave before it was too late. But what could I say? How could I explain? I started searching the small living room, glancing behind furniture, in corners, desperate to find any sign of her. That's when I saw a small candle flickering on the mantel, casting dancing shadows across the wall. it shouldn't be lit. Clara didn't like to keep any lights on when she wasn't home. Just as I approached it, a burst of darkness enveloped the room. The flame sputtered, leaving me in a chilling gloom. My breath caught in my throat. I reached for my phone, praying the light would help, but the screen stayed dark. I cursed under my breath and felt around, my hands trembling. Then I froze, sensing a presence behind me. "Clara?" I called, my voice trembling. No answer came, just the unsettling feeling that whatever had followed me was now here too. I turned slowly, heart racing. That's when I saw it standing in the doorway, her figure, but twisted, her features distorting in the flickering light. The familiar clothing, the way her hair fell, all mangled into something grotesque. "Help me," it rasped, the voice unmistakably Clara's. My blood froze. I stumbled back, slamming into the nearby table, knocking over a vase. "No!" I shouted, horrified. The whispering returned, swirling around me like a storm. I felt the pressure on my mind, closing in like a vice. What was happening? Suddenly, in the midst of the chaos, I noticed something bright on the floor, another piece of paper, like the one I'd found before. An instinct to retrieve it tugged at me, urging me to ignore the terror rising within. I hesitated. Then, before I could think, I lunged for the note, desperate for answers, whatever they might be. "Leave her alone," I cried, my throat raw as I glanced back at the Clara thing at the door. The air felt charged, as if the room held its breath, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was at the cusp of something horrifying. And that was when everything shifted. The apparition flickered, uncertainty flashing across its face. For a moment, I thought I might see the real Clara again. But then the lights flickered wildly, plunging the room into darkness, and the shadows surged forward. I clutched the paper, ready to fight back against whatever evil was here. The answers lay within my grasp, but neither the note nor the figure before me offered any reassurance. All I knew was that I had to uncover the truth quickly, before it was too late. I didn't know what to expect as I snatched the note from the floor. My fingers trembled, brushing against the surface of the paper. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to focus. Whatever was happening here, whatever this twisted version of Clara was using my fear against me. The moment I unfolded the note, a sharp chill slithered up my spine. The writing was frantic, almost desperate. "Find the altar. It holds the key. They're coming." The words blurred as tears welled in my eyes. I felt the weight of fear pushing down on me, yet something in my gut told me to act. Whatever was happening, I couldn't stand there cowering. Clara needed help, and I might be the only one who could save her. I shoved the note into my pocket and turned back toward the door. The dark figure still lingered there, its shape writhing, but I couldn't focus on that now. "I'm not afraid of you," I shouted, trying to summon courage. But with every word, doubt crept in. The figure twisted, and I could have sworn I saw Clara's eyes glinting from within the darkness. "Help me," it rasped again. It almost sounded like the real Clara, but the words rang hollow, drenched in despair. Pushing past the fear, I stepped out of the living room and into the dim hallway. My heart raced in my chest as I navigated the familiar spaces, my mind racing to remember where the altar could be. The small church that Clara sometimes talked about flashed into my memory. The little building on the edge of town held deep hidden secrets, things I had dismissed but suddenly felt vital. I rushed to the door, throwing it open with a hard shove. Night had fully descended now, and a thick fog rolled in, swallowing the yard whole. The air was damp, and I could barely see as I stepped onto the porch. The way to the church was jagged, illuminated only by the sporadic flickers of the streetlights. As I jogged down the path to the street, a sudden chill ran through the air. I could hear whispers again, creeping along the edges of my thoughts like vines. "Don't go," the voices hissed. "Don't leave her." My heartbeat quickened. Was it the apparition's doing? I had to believe it was a trick. Determined, I pressed on. I kept my pace quick, glancing over my shoulder, half expecting something ominous to follow. The shadows seemed to stretch longer beneath the glow of the streetlights, but I knew I had to reach that altar. Approaching the church, its silhouette loomed ahead, familiar and yet foreign. I pushed through the creaky front door, its sound echoing within the darkened space. The musty scent of aged wood and candles washed over me, and I stood for a moment, letting my eyes adjust. Then I heard a soft rustle, a whisper, but different this time. "You shouldn't have come." I turned, seeing something dark behind the pillars. It felt like something from my worst nightmares come to life. My breath hitched as terror clutched my stomach. I had stepped into something I couldn't control, but abandoning Clara was not an option. "Where's the altar?" I called out, my voice stronger than I felt. "I need to find it." A cold laugh echoed through the church. "You aren't ready for what you will find," the voice taunted. My pulse quickened, and as I moved further into the church, I made my way toward the back, where the altar lay hidden in a small alcove. Then, a loud crash erupted from behind me, the sound slicing through the darkness. I spun around, heart pounding. Something was coming. A shadow loomed larger, and panic crept in. "Help me," the voice begged again, this time almost a whisper. I wasn't sure if it was Clara or something else entirely. I took a step back, not knowing how this would end. I felt trapped in a web I couldn't escape from, and the urgency to uncover the truth pushed me onward. Whatever awaited me at that altar, I had to face it, if not for myself, then for Clara. I felt the shadows closing in, the air growing heavier. It was no longer just about finding the altar, now it was about survival. I had become the target of something dark, something that didn't want me to succeed. As I turned back toward the altar, the whispers grew louder, more insistent, a cacophony of warnings flooding my mind. "Leave now," they hissed. "They will claim you too." I shook my head, pushing against the surge of panic. I needed to focus. Clara was still out there, trapped in some nightmarish world. I took a deep breath and forged ahead, the soft glow of candles lighting the path to the altar. The back of the church was shrouded in darkness, but I could make out the altar ahead. It was an old stone structure, worn and cracked, covered in a dusty cloth. A sense of foreboding washed over me as I approached. I half expected something to leap out at me, but instead it was just stillness. When I reached the altar, my fingers grazed over the fabric. Beneath it, I could feel something, a texture that sent shivers down my spine. I hesitated only a moment before lifting the cloth away. What lay beneath was heart-stopping, a small, ornate box, its surface adorned with strange symbols. That must be it. This was what I was looking for, the key that could help Clara. I reached for the box, but as my fingers brushed against it, a thunderous bang rang out from the church entrance. I jolted, adrenaline flooding my veins. "Stop. You shouldn't have." The voice that had been taunting me earlier was back, sounding more furious than before. I turned, panic clawing at my insides. In the doorway stood a figure, tall, gaunt, cloaked in shadow. It moved with an unnatural grace toward me, eyes burning with an otherworldly light. I felt the air shift, heavy and charged, as if something ancient had awoken from a long sleep. "I'm not afraid of you," I yelled, but I wasn't sure I believed it. The figure raised its hand, and a wave of bone-chilling energy washed over me. The church began to tremble, and the candles flickered wildly, casting dancing shadows against the walls. "Foolish child," it sneered, "you think you can save her? You'll be lost just like her." Before I had a chance to react, it lunged forward, and everything went dark. The world around me collapsed into a void, the sounds of the church and the figure fading into silence. Then, in an instant, I was back standing alone at the altar, gasping as if I had just emerged from underwater. But the box lay open now, and a blinding light spilled from within, casting an eerie glow over the shadows. My heart raced. What had I unleashed? I peered into the box, breathless, and found a small, intricate amulet resting inside. It pulsed with energy, vibrant and full of life. That's when I heard Clara's voice again, clearer now, pleading. "Please, help me." I reached for the amulet, the weight of it heavy in my hand. Something inside me knew this was the moment of truth. Would this be the answer I was searching for, or would it seal my fate as well? I gripped the amulet tightly, feeling its warmth radiate through my fingers. The urgency of Clara's voice echoed in my mind. "Please, help me." I had to act quickly, but fear crept in like a fog, clouding my thoughts. What was this amulet capable of? Would it really help her or turn me into a victim of whatever dark force lurked in this church? A sudden rustle in the shadows made me jump, and I spun around, scanning the room. I didn't know what I expected to see, but the silence that followed made my skin crawl. The lingering scent of incense rippled in the air, and I imagined it was just the remnants of whatever ritual had been performed here long ago. Or was it something else, something darker? Determined, I decided to test the amulet. I held it close to my chest and closed my eyes, focusing on Clara's voice. "I'm coming for you," I whispered, summoning all my will. I felt a jolt of energy surge through the amulet. A beam of light shot forth, illuminating the dark corners of the church, sending shadows scrambling back into obscurity. In that moment, I saw something flicker at the edge of the light, a figure standing just beyond the reach of the glow. My heart plummeted. It was the cloaked figure from earlier, grinning with malice. "You think that little trinket can save you?" it taunted, stepping closer into the light. "You are not ready for what lies ahead. The darkness grows stronger with every foolish move you make." I took a deep breath, trying to stem the tide of fear bubbling in my chest. "I will save her," I shouted, conviction lacing my words. The figure laughed, the sound echoing like broken glass in the still air. "You don't understand. Clara is lost. You can't bring her back." The amulet in my hand began to vibrate, the energy coiling around me. "What do you know about her?" I demanded. "Tell me." Its eyes glowed even brighter, and it shook its head slowly. "You ask too much of something you don't comprehend. Every answer comes with a price." With that, the figure raised its hand, and the ground beneath me shuddered. The candles flickered violently, and a deep rumble resonated through the church's stones. I stumbled back, nearly losing my grip on the amulet. Then, to my horror, the church's walls began to crack and split, black tendrils reaching out from the fissures. My heart raced as I felt the pull of the darkness, how it threatened to swallow me whole. I couldn't give in. The amulet came alive in my grasp, glowing fiercely against the encroaching darkness. I took a step forward, heart pounding. "You won't take me. You'd have to take this." I hurled the amulet toward the shadowy figure. It ricocheted off the air, bursting into a radiant light that filled the church, forcing the figure to recoil. In that brief moment of distraction, I rushed past it toward the back of the church, desperate to find Clara. "Where are you?" I called, my voice echoing in the empty spaces. The shadows trembled around me, and I could feel a presence sneering behind me. Just when I thought I had a moment of reprieve, I heard Clara's voice again, sharper this time. "Help! They're coming for you!" Suddenly, the ground erupted in front of me, and I froze. More shadows were emerging. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I prepared for a confrontation. I had to save her. But now I felt the darkness closing in again, and I didn't know how much longer I could hold it back. I bolted down the dimly lit aisle, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The shadows shifted restlessly, coiling like living entities eager to ensnare me. "Clara!" I called out, the sound of my voice barely resonating through the heavy atmosphere. When I reached the altar again, the abrupt fissures in the walls beckoned me to flee, but something deep inside urged me to stay, to fight. "Help me!" Clara's voice resonated in my ears, a haunting melody woven with urgency. Instinctively, I reached back toward the amulet still glowing on the altar. The sound reverberated through the church, pounding against the air like a war drum. Whatever malevolent entity had haunted Mrs. Thompson now threatened to engulf me and the girl I needed to save. I needed to confront it, head-on. Taking a deep breath, I cast the shadows around me a defiant glare. "I won't let you take her," I shouted, forcing out the words as if they could shatter the oppressive weight bearing down on me. But the shadows only seemed to laugh. Then, a low hum thrummed, vibrating my bones and sending chills up my spine. The very air twisted with something dark, a dark mass that roiled before me. I felt a flicker of familiarity as I peered into the growing gloom. And just when I thought I saw a glimpse of Clara, her silhouette dimly illuminated by the faint light, an overwhelming shadow surged forward, encroaching upon me. "Don't be a fool, little one." The cloaked figure emerged, its essence swirling in a tempest of shadows. "She belongs to me now." The words dripped with disdain, and I could feel despair clawing at the edges of my resolve. No! I thrashed against the approaching darkness, and in that chaotic moment, I realized what I had to do. The amulet! I needed to channel my focus into it, use it against the shadows gathering around me. Clenching it tightly, I shouted, "I command you to release her. Come back to me, Clara." The amulet pulsed brightly in response, vibrant light erupting from within as I summoned every ounce of hope, fear, and determination. The shadows recoiled, twisting and writhing as the light sliced through the darkness like a dagger. I could feel Clara's presence getting stronger, her voice piercing through the cacophony of whispers. "Jamie!" she called, her tone now laced with urgency. "You must hurry." The light from the amulet surged, expanding with each desperate beat of my heart. The shadowy figure screeched, a sound that echoed in my mind like cracking glass. "You can't!" it screamed, the terror rippling across its twisted form. "I can and I will." I shot back, pushing forward, the amulet glowing ever brighter with every word. I concentrated on Clara's face, her carefree laughter, the warmth of her friendship, the joy I felt when I first met her. I knew those threads of connection were stronger than the rippling darkness threatening to consume us. Suddenly, there was a shift. The walls of the church rumbled, and the shadows began to falter. They stumbled backward in a dance of panic as the light intensified. "No! You are not worthy!" The figure bellowed, its angry form shriveling as the amulet released a blinding wave. With one final surge, all erupted into brilliance. The entire church shook violently, the old wooden beams cracking overhead while the shadows writhed, twisted in agony. "Leave her alone!" I cried, directing the energy toward the cloaked entity. In that instant, I felt a weight lift from the air, the shadow's grasp on Clara weakening, then, silence, and engulfing stillness fell. I blinked, the darkness lifted, the church illuminated in soft golden light. The altar stood untouched, the shadows dissipated into wisps of smoke. I turned, gasping for breath, and there stood Clara, a muted version of herself, yet whole. "Clara!" I rushed toward her. Relief crashed over me like a tidal wave, but before I reached her, I noticed something else lurking at the periphery. The cloaked figure was gone, but the shadows lingered in the corners, whispering dark promises and half-formed threats. It was far from over. "Jamie," Clara whispered, her eyes wide with unspoken fear. "What did we unleash?" Her voice was shaky, reflecting a reality I hadn't fully grasped. I don't know." I could feel the weight of unknown consequences pressing down on my chest, heavy like a stone. The amulet lay still in my palm, pulsating dimly. What had it unleashed? The shadows danced just out of our reach, their whispers growing louder, swirling like a dark wind around us. I had evoked something ancient in the battle for Clara's soul, and the lingering tension in the air was unyielding, threatening, yet inexplicably part of me. I looked at her, the fear evident in her gaze unmistakable. "We have to go. Now!" We stepped out of the church, the fog thick around us while the whispers behind us faded into the shadows. I turned back, one last glance at the building, feeling it hold its breath as we crossed the threshold. The dark figure was gone, for now. But I sensed it lingering just out of sight, biding its time. I moved to take Clara's hand, ready to escape into the night. But in the recesses of my mind, questions echoed unanswered and nagging. What would happen next? Had I truly banished the darkness, or just delayed its return? Would the church and its hauntings ever be truly free? As dawn broke in the distance, scattering the remnants of night, I held tight to Clara's hand. No answers awaited us, only a lingering sense of unease. Whatever we had unleashed wasn't finished with us yet. The darkness still beckoned, hiding secrets I knew I might never uncover.